Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who is hoping to unlock more intimacy with his partner. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we are not. We are not professionals. We're not trained in any of this. So please take our advice as you see fit. We're only here to offer our humble musings. So if we've had some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding, but mostly confusing experience that is love.
All right. Our letter today comes from Rex, whose pronouns are he, him, who is writing from Los Angeles, California. My partner, she, her, and I have been going together since our sophomore year of college. We started dating at age 19 and have been together going on 12 years. Last summer, I had complained to a mutual friend of ours that I was not feeling super fulfilled in the relationship. This friend then went and told my partner without me knowing. So I get home from work that week to a deeply upset and angry partner. She's livid and feels caught off guard. I'm nearly speechless because at that time, I really didn't have the language to explain why I was feeling what I was feeling. I thought I was merely venting to a friend and hoping to get some affirmation or feedback. Regardless, this event kicked off weeks of yelling and crying at each other. Sadly, this was probably the most vulnerable we had been with each other in 12 years. I would say that both of us are very avoidant and do not have the tools or skills right now to communicate with each other. It has been a rough year as I contemplate where this relationship is going. I have made attempts to bring up hard conversations, and my partner is having a hard time opening up. I understand my role in our dynamic and that I can do more to make it an emotionally safer space for both of us. However, I am feeling exhausted by being the one that always brings this up. On top of this, a big related piece is that we have never had penetrative sex before, and that has led me to being very sexually frustrated and full of resentment. Naturally, I have been too avoidant to bring it up until now. We rarely, if at all, if ever, talk about sex. I understand that these levels of vulnerability and intimacy are intertwined. There's a part of me that is trying and hoping that if we can crack open the emotionally intimate parts of ourselves, the physical intimacy will follow. That's my hope, at least. I just want to feel like we tried everything before we consider breaking up. We had tried couples counseling together, but my partner did not like the idea of opening up to a stranger. So I do hope one day that she can be brave enough to seek individual therapy for herself. I want her to extend that love to herself. I really, truly still love her with all of my heart. I just don't know how much longer I should let myself be patient in this situation for something to change. We're both in our 30s and watching our peers pair off and get married and start families, and it's obviously a bit stressful. I recognize that societal pressures are just that, societal pressures, but it has been hard to ignore. Thank you for reading.
Aw, thank you so much for writing and for trusting us with this very vulnerable letter. You are doing the right thing by practicing that vulnerability that you want to see reciprocated in your relationship. I can tell from what you shared of your relationship and your dynamic that might not be the easiest thing for you. So I just want to applaud you for asking these questions in the first place. I even want to applaud you for talking to your friend, for vocalizing that before you might have been able to fully explain why those feelings were over there. And I want to say, just like a general, I'm sorry that friend shared that without your consent. I think everybody deserves a neutral party to talk about, if not neutral, a compassionate, supportive partner or sounding board, to be able to talk about your life's experience without, to talk about your feelings without having to fully understand them yet. That's the beauty of therapy right there. And I kind of feel like your friend might have taught you a different lesson about sharing by divulging that without your consent. And so I'm disappointed that you had to experience that. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're asking these questions. You obviously really care about your partner. And also you are growing up with them. Your maturity is changing. You are changing as a person, which happens in every relationship. And you're starting to realize that you are seeing a path in which this current iteration of your relationship may not be the most sustainable one, or might lead to resentment, or might lead to misbehavior, or whatever. And you're trying to prevent that. And I think that's the most honorable, courageous thing. So good job. Sam and I are going to offer you our humble perspective, without actually being active participants in this relationship, and hopefully give you some good talking points to bring to your partner, and also questions for yourself, questions to ask your vulnerable, resilient, and worthy heart about what you want in your life, not just in this relationship. But first, we're going to take a very quick break.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Thanks again, Rex, for trusting us with this question. And I agree with everything that Sierra said before the break. And I want to also name that I'm really proud of you for being able to kind of unlock some of the ways. I'm really proud of you for being able to kind of approach vulnerability differently, given the way that this has all played out, right? And, you kind of own and acknowledge the fact that both of you are kind of conflict avoidant and so have trouble talking about things in the relationship in a really intimate and vulnerable way. And I really appreciate that. It seems like you're kind of seeing the way that you contributed to that pattern, like that feeling that you experienced of wanting to tell a friend about like, this isn't working for me super well, and then not really having the option to avoid it anymore because it kind of came to a head, and you trying to use that reality to say, okay, well then let's like dig into this, right? Like let's practice something new. Let's get into what do we actually want? What are we actually feeling? How is this moving forward for us? And I think that that's really wonderful and great. And I would also encourage you to think about, you talked about doing couples therapy, you talked about therapy for your partner. And also, if you're not currently in therapy, I would encourage it for you as well. Part of the difficulty of having these crunchy and challenging conversations with our partners is that sometimes it can be really hard to practice the self-awareness we need to be able to know what our own patterns are, what our preferences are, how we want to go about getting the things that we want and need out of our relationship, how we can even name the things that we want and need out of our relationship. I think we often think that like relationships are about reaching towards the other person. And that's absolutely true. That's an important piece of it. We need to be aware of what our partners need, what they're asking for, what their preferences are in the relationship. But actually, the work of doing that self-awareness, that practice around like, okay, where am I feeling fulfilled and unfulfilled in this relationship is actually a service to the relationship, right? And it's a necessary part of us being able to make relationships sustainable and fulfilling for both people in it. And so I know you talk about how your partner deserves therapy, right? That going to therapy would be an act of bravery for her. And I just want to reflect that back to you and say, you deserve therapy. You deserve to be brave for yourself. And I think that like getting into some of the practice of talking about vulnerable and intimate things with a neutral third-party person who is trained in being able to have those conversations can help make it a little easier to navigate those difficult conversations with your partner, right? I use my therapist as a sounding board all the time to help me figure out what's coming up for me in crunchiness in my relationships, and then what do I want to do given the fact of that crunchiness, knowing what I know about myself and why this is crunchy for me. Like it's so immensely helpful to be able to have that person that can help say like, I'm noticing that this is happening with you, right? And I think that you deserve that. And I think that that might be actually really helpful for you as you're trying to navigate what does it look like for you to be able to have the tools that you need to not just avoid conflict, but to sort of come into conflict with compassion, with tools, and with the ability to navigate it in a way that's going to affirm each other's sense of self-worth and hopefully get to some sort of agreement about how you two want to move forward.
Yes, I love that. And from our perspective, we can see the care that you have for this relationship, the love that is obviously the foundation of it. But because we're outsiders, we can also see a little bit more clearly the disconnect that's happening. And so I just want to say very explicitly to you that, for example, I think we get kind of bogged down when we're trying to think about what our values are, what's important to us, et cetera, or like what we need out of a relationship. What I see is something like approaching your sex life with your partner. That is meant to be a conversation. That's meant to be a give and take. That's meant to be, respectful, loving, exploratory, but also within the bounds of each of your own bodies, consent, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, the future of potentially having penetrative sex in your relationship, that's a really valid desire to bring to your partner, to talk about. I think that to actually have penetrative sex with your partner in the future, to me, is a negotiable. That's something that you can negotiate. You can talk about. You can find the boundaries of your comfort and explore together, right? Talking about potentially having penetrative sex or your sexual needs in a relationship is a non-negotiable to me. You have to be able to talk about your desires, talk about the crunchy things, talk about the conflict in order to have a sustainable relationship for me. How about this? In order to have a sustainable relationship that grows with you, sure, we can have long-lasting relationships in which you don't grow together, and that's okay. That is a reality of many relationships. But if you want to grow together, if you want to expand the current iteration, the current definition of this relationship, the current boundaries of this relationship, you have to be able to talk about those uncomfortable topics, which is, I sadly have to say, it's a little bit of a red flag for me from your partner, her resistance to having these conversations. And don't get me wrong, I understand it is terrifying to be vulnerable. It's terrifying to risk vulnerability, risk loss, risk confusion, risk rejection. None of this is surprising to me, but I will say that if you want to grow together or grow at all, you have to be uncomfortable. So having penetrative sex in the future, negotiable, sure. Being able to talk about having penetrative sex, potentially, even if you never do it, that's non-negotiable. That is something that I think that your relationship will need in order to thrive.
You don't need to have penetrative sex to have a relationship that's going to be fulfilling and sustainable for you, right? But in order to be able to get to a fulfilling and sustainable relationship, you're going to have difficult and uncomfortable conversations with each other, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean, yeah.
And I think, here's what I'll say about my perspective on this. Again, as an outsider, right? Here's my perspective, which is that you two have been operating in a certain pattern for 11, 12 years, right? Where you don't talk about the difficult things. Sex as a conversation topic doesn't come up. You don't talk about whether or not you're being fulfilled or unfulfilled in the relationship. You don't talk about what you need more of or less of, right? You've been in that pattern for a long time. And this event where you had this friend kind of betray your trust has disrupted that pattern and said oh, this isn't going to work anymore. And now you're trying to learn an entirely different way of being in relationship with each other. And that learning how to be in relationship with each other is going to take intentional time, work, and ability to navigate through discomfort. And I think that you two are capable of that, because I think that everyone is probably capable of that, right? I think that all of us are capable of trying to change and to putting intention into learning new patterns of relationship with each other. My issue is that if she's not able or willing to be able to put in that effort, to do that intentional work, to be able to talk to a couples therapist, or to be able to open up about what's going on for her. And there may be lots of different reasons why that's true for her. So I'm really not trying to disparage her in any way, right? I know that there are reasons why people are incapable of doing this change. But if she's not willing or capable of really intentionally engaging in a meaningful way in the discomfort of trying to change 11 years worth of patterns with you, then I don't see how this relationship changes, right? You can't single-handedly bring her into a new way of operating, right? She has to make that choice for herself. She has to decide to be more vulnerable, to be more intimate, to be able to open up to you and perhaps to other people that are going to help you in this journey. But you can't just like grab her wrist and try and drag her to the finish line, right? She has to walk that path herself. And if she's not able or willing to do that, then I don't think that this relationship is going to be able to weather through the changes that it sounds like you need for this relationship to go through in order for it to be sustainable for you. And it's up to you to decide when you decide to stop trying to pull her towards the finish line with you, right? You have to decide when too much is too much or when you've tried enough. A year is a long time, right? A year is a long time to be sitting in this discomfort with no off-ramp into different ways of being with each other. And maybe it's not a long time for you. Maybe after 11 years, you're willing to sit through it. But I can't tell you, oh, you should do this for 9 months. And if it doesn't work, stop, right? All I can tell you is that it's not going to work unless she begins to walk with you hand in hand towards this new pattern of relationship, as opposed to being the one who kind of is trying to pull you back into the pattern that wasn't working before.
And I will just say, it's not that it's a red flag for me, but I want to point out her resistance to couple counseling and her reasoning, quote, I don't want to open up to a stranger. I might just be overly sensitive or protective of you, but that feels like a tactic to isolate you and to stay the way that you are. She might not be intentionally trying to isolate you in a malicious way, but, you know, we are very resistant to change. We're resistant to observing our own patterns, you know, and that is not enough of a reason for me, for you. That is not a good enough reason for me, for her to say no to that, especially with the length of your relationship, especially with the issues that you're dealing with. Like, to put it really bluntly, I would say to her, like, that is not a good enough excuse. Like, all therapists are strangers, and everyone who uses a therapist meets their therapist as a stranger. And that's part of the reason why therapy is helpful, is because it's a trained professional who is outside of your life, right? Like, to me, it's not like it's a red flag, but I raise my eyebrows at that line, because I feel her digging her hands in to the patterns and the behaviors that she has grown comfortable in. But change doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in discomfort, and opening up to a trained professional, especially in a partnership situation like this. Like, I just, you know, let me say one more thing about therapy too. I know a couple in my life that one of the partners has started going to therapy, and the other partner is very resistant to therapy, is not interested in it. And the first partner's therapist has recommended that they ask their partner to come to therapy with them, you know, has recommended that they start couples therapy. And the second partner has said no, but the second partner is benefiting from the language and the lessons that the first partner is learning from therapy. But Sam's right. You can't drag your wife into a new pattern of your relationship. She has to come willingly with you. But if your partner doesn't want to go to couples therapy, I would push on that a little, push back on that. And also, I would extremely prioritize therapy for yourself, because of the tools it will give you that you can hopefully share with your partner. Like, the purpose of sharing the story about the other couple in my life is that the second partner is more open to going to couples therapy now, because they've seen the benefits, the active, tangible benefits in their life that the first partner is applying. So I just want to call I just want to call that line out a little, because it's concerning to me that she's hiding behind secrecy, right? Because we do that when we want to stay stuck, when we want to isolate, you know what I mean?
For sure. Absolutely. And I would ask her, like, is your comfort worth giving up this relationship for, right? Like,
Yes.
is your comfort more important than
that
the
sounds
intimacy
blunt,
that your
but
partner is
honestly,
asking
that's how
for you?
I feel. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I really, that is the seriousness to which I feel about the potential of going to therapy for your relationship and her resistance. I really feel quite seriously to push against it.
And I think it's important for you all to get clear about what your goals are in this relationship, right? Because it sounds like right now you have incompatible goals, which is that you're trying to move into a place of deeper intimacy, deeper connection with each other, more vulnerable conversations. And it sounds like her goal is to just kind of keep things the same, but where you're happy, right? Like that seems to be where she wants the relationship to go. And so being able to talk about that and decide, are you actually in pursuit of the same thing in this relationship? And if so, then how is that reflected in our actions and behaviors? I think that that's going to be an important conversation for the two of you to have. And I would be explicit about that conversation, right? I would be like, this is how it feels for me right now. It feels like I'm trying to move us in this direction and you're trying to move our relationship in this direction. Is that true, right? Is that how things are going, right? And then if she's like, no, I'm moving in the direction that you want to move, then say like, okay, so what are the actions and behaviors? What are we trying together as a couple to help get us to that new place? And if it's not working, then we need to be trying new things together. And I think that's where the rubber hits the road. Like you'll see what she's willing and capable of doing. And I hope that she's willing and capable to move towards the new relationship that you want to build with her, or the new iteration of the relationship that you want to build with her. And if she's not able to, you deserve to be in relationship with somebody who's going to be open to you, right? Who's going to be able to be vulnerable. You're learning more about your need for vulnerability, your need for connection. And that's great and wonderful. And you deserve to have that connection and that vulnerability with your partner. And I hope that your current partner is able to give that to you. And if she's not, then that's information that you need to use to help you decide whether or not you want to stay in this relationship.
That was really well said. All right, my darling, we love you so much and we believe in you and your partner. And we hope this helps.
Thank you so much for writing. We love you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like to join us for our monthly office hours, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you get access to those monthly office hours where Sierra and I hop on Zoom with any of our patrons who want to join us when we talk about all sorts of different topics. And we also answer people's questions in real time, which is super, super fun. If you want to join us, our next office hours are on August 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Sign up for Patreon now so that you can get access to all of those episodes and also join us for those August office hours. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DM, send us your favorite relationship meme, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and his music, and remember, discomfort is where change happens. You have to be a little uncomfortable. You have to do something new in order for something to change. And if all else fails,
just break up.